Today we're going to make a bottom crust chicken pot pie. What's a chicken pot pie without a bottom crust? I know Martha Stewart doesn't make it that way, but this is the way we like it. And I take all the shortcuts. Now, the first thing that I would do is use butter and flour to make what I call a roux. In this particular recipe, I'm going to use 3 tablespoons of butter and 3 tablespoons of flour. Basically, you do the same amount of flour as you do butter, and that makes it work out correctly. I do use these already made pie crust, set them out about 15 minutes ahead of time so that they will be easier to unroll, but not too long before because they'll be hard to unroll. And I use my own pint of canned chicken breast. I use the butter-flavored spray to grease the pie plate, and self-rising flour. It has the sodium that I use in it because I don't add salt. Use poultry seasoning and celery seed, and I will have the ingredients and recipe in the information underneath the video. Now, I always have some extra saved chicken broth from my chicken. Sometimes I'm going to make a salad. I don't need the broth. I freeze it, and that way I have it on hand for this type of a recipe in case you need some more. Now, when the butter is all melted, don't let it burn. Butter easily burns. Then you add your flour. So I'm just kind of sprinkling it in here, 3 tablespoons to 3 tablespoons. Typically, in this size of a pie pan that I'm using, that's about the right amount of gravy that I need with the right thickness that I need. But you'll be able to judge yours. You can test this recipe. If you like it more gravy, you can always add a little bit more. But you want to, at least the way I learned it, for all the little fat molecules in the butter to bind with all the little fat molecules in the flour. So you just kind of stir and stir to make sure they're all blended. So that's what I usually do, get everything bound together. So that kind of works for me. Just do what works for you. And you can kind of make a judgment of how much more you'll need. Now, I use the chicken broth that comes right out of my canned chicken because it is straight chicken broth. I put no liquid in my chicken when I can it. I'll link a video to my canning chicken recipe up here. But that is strictly drained out of directly from the chicken. That's not water. It's chicken broth directly from the chicken. But I add what's in there, and then if I feel like I need just a little more liquid, like it seems a little too thick, I'll add a little bit of extra broth that I've saved over. Now, this is a little bit that when I've made chicken salad, I've poured it into a baggie, laid it in the freezer to freeze, and I can just add that extra little, whatever that would be, I say a half cup or so. I can add that into this recipe. And I just dump it in, partially frozen, doesn't matter. Now, I add pepper. My family likes a lot of pepper, so I just kind of shake it in here, shake it in there. I don't really know how much, so start with a half a teaspoon, whatever you want to use. Now, I use frozen vegetables. I like those the best. I like they're the best texture. I use sweet corn and then the peas and carrots. Some don't like peas. I add less peas. We all love corn. I add a lot of corn. But use the vegetables that you like. I've used mixed vegetables before, but at this point in time, I just like to concentrate on just the vegetables that we like. I don't care for the green beans that are in frozen vegetables. Weird, I know, but that's just how the way we feel. So this has all gotten real smooth. All the little molecules have blended together. The extra chicken broth has made the gravy just right. So I'm pouring in about a cup of the peas and carrots. That usually works for as much as the rest of them can stand. And then I'm pouring in We have a few technical difficulties as I pour in the corn, But we'll clean up that mess and then get right back to it. So we've got about 2 cups of frozen corn in here. And as it stiffens up a little bit, I'll just trickle in a little bit of milk here and there to just keep the consistency into a thick gravy. Now, of course, when you pour in the frozen vegetables, that solidifies everything and makes it thicker, so you just got to wait for it to smooth out. So dice up some celery, and I have that about a half cup, maybe a stalk. And then I also do a large, half of a big large onion, because we love onion. Well, my family loves onion. So that's what we put in there. And then stir that in. You can see it's getting pretty thick. Some of that little frozenness is still in there, but that will gradually, as you keep stirring, it'll melt. Now I do poultry seasoning. I've got a half teaspoon measuring there, so I did 2 of them. My husband likes sage, my son hates sage, so I just compromise at poultry seasoning. Just do it to whatever your family's tastes are. And then I add a little bit of parsley flakes, mostly for just the way it looks. It adds a little something extra into the texture and look of the filling. So you just keep stirring, don't let anything burn. I've kind of got it on a low medium, and we can just keep getting everything hot and defrosting. Now the pie plate that I use is a deep dish. It's a 10-inch, and I just butter it with a quick spray and then spread the butter around in the bottom of that pie plate. And with these 2 pie crusts that I use, you have a bottom and a top perfectly fitting. Now I have made it in a 13x9. You might want to get 2 sets of the pie crusts so that you can do that. And then I just puzzle piece them in there, maybe make a lattice top, but whatever makes the amount that you need. Now you can taste your gravy here and there to see if you need a little more seasonings. And again, I don't add any salt. We don't eat a lot of salt here in the family based on my husband's dietary restrictions, so I'm used to no salt. Now, in my pan here, I know my filling needs to be about halfway up to those bolts. So when it's filled up about halfway up, I know it's going to fill that pie plate. But you can make that judgment when you get used to you making your own. Now my pint of chicken, I just pop it out and kind of crumble it so we get into pieces. It's, as you'll see in the video on the canning the chicken, it's cut into big chunks, but once they cook, they just crumble real easily for salads, soups, anything you want to make. So just crumble that into there, and you've got your chicken added. I think that seems to work perfectly. So I've used about 3 or 4 cups of vegetables, including that celery and onion. And it probably amounts, since it's a pint, I'll say 2 cups of chicken, but it does shrink a little bit when it cooks. Now I like the thick filling. I don't like the runny filling that the store-bought pies have, chicken pot pies or beef pot pies. I like it thick. So I just trickle in a little milk here and there. You can use heavy cream if you prefer not to have the milk, but you just get the liquid to about how you'd like it. Now this is getting to be just about how I like the chicken filling to be, the pot pie filling. So now we're going to get the crust ready. And the crust is the only thing that I kind of vary on my chicken pot pie. I roll out the crust onto my little cutting sheet here, and if it's been sitting out for about 15 minutes, it unrolls real easily. You just pull off that little side. If you let it sit out too long, it's gotten a little bit too moist. I don't know what the word would be. And it won't peel easily. It wants to tear or kind of mush into itself. But it comes off real easy if it's been about 10 to 15 minutes out of the refrigerator. So I just roll it into the bottom of the pie pan that's been butter sprayed and just press it into all the edges. Just squish in that crust. It's got to have the bottom crust. You know that. So you get it all fixed, and then I like to add to this crust celery seed. You just take some celery seed that's in the shaky can and just sprinkle it all along, and then just press it with your fingers into the pie crust. It just adds a different savory taste to the pie crust that's just perfect for the chicken pot pie. You try it sometime, see if you like it. But to me, it works perfectly. Now you do the same thing to the top crust. You just peel it out of its little wrapper, stretch it out across your cutting board, and get it nice and flat, and sprinkle the celery seed. That makes the crusty top of your pie has embedded celery seed on it, and it is just so good. I don't know if you've ever tried this before. I've been doing it for, 20 years, 25 years. I've cooked a long time. I'm old. But this is what works out best for me. So now your bottom crust is ready, your top crust is ready, and now you go get your filling, and you can see it's nice and thick. Just pour it in. Now you can use diced potatoes if you'd like in your filling, but I save the carbs and have mashed potatoes as a side dish. It's so good with mashed potatoes, the crust, the filling. Don't even get me started. I love mashed potatoes, but try not to eat carbs. But just spread that around and then lay your top crust down. Just slide it off the little cutting sheet. And then I do no fancy fluted crust. I just basically fold it in, press it under, and try to keep all the filling inside. We don't want the filling to bubble and boil out, but we do like that crust on the side. The crust is everything. So once you've got that fixed, put a couple slits in, and then your oven, supposedly you've preheated that to 350. My oven, for whatever reason, sets on centigrade, and I've changed it several times, but it just reverts back to centigrade. I think it wants to be in Norway instead of in Ohio. So anyway, you let it heat up, and then when it's all preheated, you're ready. I have a little chart there. When it calls for 350, I know I got to set it at 177. And then you just pop it in the oven. Now you'll know your oven. Put it on the bottom rack if you have trouble getting the bottom crust baked. I keep mine on the top because it does bake the bottom crust well. But for 30 minutes you can put it on the bottom and then revert another 15 minutes for the top. Got a nice browned crust. It looks so good. Let it cool for about 15, 20, even 25 or 30 minutes. Doesn't mess up your dinner. It still stays very, very warm inside. But you've got to let it wait that time, or it's just too gooey and too hot. You can't eat it that hot anyway. It would be like molten lava. So let it set for that 15 minutes, and then you can cut it and fairly easily dish it out onto the plate. Look how nice that looks. Now I would scrape up the rest of that and add it to my dish. But put a salad with it, mashed potatoes too if you want to, or any other side dish, and it makes the perfect, perfect dinner. Comfort food at its best. I hope you like the recipe. Again, it's underneath the video here if you'd like to write it down. But thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.